And a lot of times people and whatever we believe is what we'll create. You already touched on that. It's like the inner world creates the outer world. And so we want to be right about what we believe, even if what we believe doesn't serve us. So we will literally delete, distort information that comes in through our senses to fit into what we believe. And this is why people consistently have the same patterning of things occur in their life.
Welcome my guest, Stephanie Kwong. She is a subconscious rewiring coach, hypnotherapist, breathwork facilitator, and host of the Rise Higher podcast. She considers herself the secret weapon for the driven and ambitious who want to live their life at their highest potential. Whether it's getting to the next level in your business or career, transforming your relationships, or experiencing greater feelings of confidence, peace, or fulfillment in your life. All right, I want to welcome onto this show, Stephanie Kwong. It is such an honor to reconnect with you. I believe we met, correct me if I'm wrong, back when we did MITT. Is that right?
No, further back.
No?
Lipstick Sisters. Go.
Was it? Okay, yeah. So I know there was some connection there. I thought it was either one of them were the ways we met, but I wasn't sure which one came first. How funny, yeah? Small world. Yeah. And then you did, I think you did MITT first. I think you were a step ahead of me.
Yeah, I did it. And then you came in, Catherine came in, and a lot of those beautiful sisters from that group. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That seems like lifetimes ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness.
It was like was that 2015, 2016?
I have no clue. It was another life for myself, at least, which I'm sure you feel the same. Well, I am so excited to chat with you today, and it's just great to reconnect. I've been wanting to have you on the podcast for some time, and just like synergy, it just worked out for now. So I know you are super big into personal development, but it's also because you also dive into the deep end yourself with your own personal development yourself. So it's not only serving your clients in their course of development, but very much your own. So I would love to hear, what has your journey been through going within your inner work, and what does that really look like for you?
Wow, that's a lot. How much time do you have for this one? So I actually feel, and I really tune in, like, I know everybody's soul, the purpose is for evolution and growth, right? Like the evolution of our consciousness and of our souls, and to learn lessons in this lifetime. And I feel very blessed that at a very young age, I was exposed to personal development work. I had a phenomenal guide, my mom, surprisingly, who was an immigrant. Like, she came here from China at 17, but because of her deep hardships of being abandoned in China at 5 years old, and then having challenges with her, her marriage with my dad, she needed some deep healing for herself. And so I grew up listening to Tony Robbins on tape in my house. Like, my mom bought it from his infomercial. So it was already, these concepts and distinctions of growth and personal development were already being embedded into my system at a very young age, without my mom probably even realizing the impact that it would have on me. She was using it for her own self. And, by proximity, fortunately, I was in the home listening to distinctions that were really powerful if you abide by them in life, and paradigms for life that really support your inner freedom, your empowerment, and your growth. So yeah, that's kind of where it kicked off. And through the course of time too, I watched my mom going to vision quests. She worked with therapists. She worked in women's circles. She did drum circles. She made vision boards. And so again, fortunate that as a kid, I was being exposed to this, not realizing that this was actually going to be a path that I chose as a career. I always had a deep desire to serve. I actually got turned away trying to volunteer at the Humane Society when I was 9 years old with my friend Dina Landerman. And I always was in service in some way, volunteering. I was a candy striper. I got trained in the suicide hotline when I was in college at UC Berkeley, worked with the homeless there, worked with homeless and at-risk youth foster kids when I was in LA. So there was always this service thread that was running through me. But in order to do that and serve, I think what the divine had as a plan was, again, my growth. So first with Tony Robbins on tape to then I started seeking on my own. While I had a good childhood, right, there was also a lot of deep trauma that ran through my guides in life, which then got embedded into me or conditioned into me culturally, as well as just through their own challenges that they went through. And so I started seeking. I studied psychology when I was in college, and then got really obsessed with human potential growth. And so then I think my first deep entry in was Landmark. This was in like 2002. So I went through Landmark, got trained up in their introduction leadership program, and then just kept seeking all the different modalities that were out there. Like I just became obsessed with discovering how I could continue to unlock my potential, but also heal the trauma and the wounds that I were observing were really impacting my life in ways that I didn't want it to anymore. So it has not been a straight path. It's been kind of like all over the place, but I have tried or experienced pretty much, I wouldn't say everything out there because I know that there's still things I don't know of. But a lot of times when people bring up, like, have you done hypnosis, to any sort of somatic work, to medicine work, I'm like, yep, tried it all. So it's been nonstop. I've literally been obsessed, and I've also been trained up in a lot of different modalities as well, the ones that I've found to be most impactful in my life, and been able to bring that out to my clients too.
Amazing. Yeah, I was going to ask you, what do you think has been the most transformational life experience through some inner work and modalities that you've used?
Yeah, I mean, MITT was really impactful. I don't know about you, sister, but like there was a couple exercises in there that just blew my heart wide open and actually allowed me to see my power in an experiential way. I think that's so powerful, experiential learning versus just like cognitive learning where you're getting distinctions in knowledge and wisdom, but it's not like fully embodied and implemented in your life because you've experienced it. But also in terms of modalities, like hypnosis was huge for me for a long time. I got great results for myself, great results for the clients I was working with. Even NLP is very powerful. And then somatic work, of course, like working through the body. But now my big passion and obsession are the rapid rewire method protocols. We are getting insane results for people, creating mental and emotional relief, as well as breaking through inner barriers, releasing trauma, and even taking people into full-blown spiritual awakenings just by using like scripts and protocols and no medicine and stuff. So it's been really exciting using those.
Wow. Okay. So I've heard about hypnosis that one friend told me that you could for myself, I can't remember anything from, let's say, age 10 back. So I heard that hypnosis is actually really good for actually recovering those memories. Is that true?
Yeah. Yeah. So
Amazing.
I don't really practice it anymore because I'm literally just building rapid rewire. But when I was using hypnosis a lot with my clients, I would do age regression. So I could bring people back to different points in time. A lot of times it's like, what is the limiting belief that they have, right? And we know that we weren't born with these limiting beliefs. Essentially, they were either conditioned into us because they were beliefs passed down by people that we looked up to or that influenced us in some way, or they were misinterpretations of experiences that we had because our little kid brain, where our prefrontal cortex isn't fully evolved yet, where we can truly have logic and reasoning, we were making up weird stories about events that occurred for us that many times are very disempowering. Because a lot of times as kids, right, we think everything's our fault. And so if something occurs or someone gets upset, we'll then like turn it onto ourselves and create a really negative or disempowering story about who we are or what we're capable of or whatever that might be about self that then gets carried through in life. And so that usually starts at a very young age. So it's really key to be able to go back in time sometimes to actually uncover where is the genesis of this thing so that we can resolve it and heal it. And hypnosis is a really powerful pathway to let people access their subconscious, because the subconscious stores literally everything. And when you can kind of go back, it'll like give you, when you really work in tandem with the subconscious and you request to find out when did this occur, it'll share the moments of time in the past of when these negative beliefs were created.
It's so fascinating, and we'll go much deeper into that. But as it's been said before, it's not our outside experiences that necessarily shape or hold us back the most. It's our inner limitations we put on ourselves, which are stemming from these subconscious beliefs that were formed from early on that we don't even recognize. So I would love if you could talk about, number one, let's dumb this down a little bit. So subconscious beliefs, if you could just share what it is and why this is so critical for us to know, like what is running in the background that we don't even realize.
Yeah. So your subconscious beliefs, or your beliefs essentially, are thoughts that you have deemed as your truth in the moment. So when I call these little t truths, right? Because they're not actual capital T truths that really are the truths of the world, but it's what we've adopted as essentially our compass for life. And whatever we believe, and these become our internal compass of like what we're capable of, what we believe about the world, what we believe about ourselves, it literally creates the experiences that we have, because whatever it is that's stored as your beliefs, and the beliefs are usually formed when we were in childhood. So from about birth till 7, 8 years old, we're actually in a hypnotic state. That's why it's so powerful to go into hypnosis, to be able to recall memories, because you're in a hypnotic state, meaning you're suggestible. Whatever people are telling you, you just adopt as truth, because you don't know to say that's not right when you're 5 years old, when someone's telling you that this is a microphone, right? You're just going to go, okay, that's a microphone. You're learning and picking up things in the world. So if someone also tells you you're slow, you're stupid, we can't afford that, or be quiet, people don't like when you're loud, we start to just listen to what people are telling us. Again, we're suggestible, and we're just adopting in what people are saying. Those become our beliefs, right? And those get embedded into our subconscious. And a lot of times people, and whatever we believe is what we'll create. You already touched on that. It's like the inner world creates the outer world. And so we want to be right about what we believe, even if what we believe doesn't serve us. So we will literally distort information that comes in through our senses to fit into what we believe. And this is why people consistently have the same patterning of things occur in their life. Like, as an example, I had a belief, there's two actually that come to mind right now, but one of them was that men weren't to be trusted. Even though it's not what I consciously wanted to believe, right? But that was a subconscious belief that I had because of the male influences that I had in my life growing up, that I felt a bit betrayed, and I couldn't trust them. I couldn't rely on them. I didn't feel safe with them. And so because that was an unconscious belief that I had, and I hadn't rewired it yet, I kept calling in men who cheated. Now, of course, consciously, I'm not wanting to date men who cheat. Like, who wants that? But it's not my conscious mind that does the picking. It's the unconscious mind, right? That actually was like out in reality, sourcing in the very experiences and people and things to continue to validate what I believe. And so that's why that same pattern kept occurring. And until I really rewired that belief, that I remember the first belief that I wired in was, everywhere I go, all I see is good men. And literally, when I knew that was locked in, I had the best experience with different men, not like romantically, but just like men wanting to open doors and to support and give help and just be chivalrous and kind. And that wasn't what I was witnessing in my reality. And now that was probably what was happening in my world. But again, we delete and distort things. So I was probably filtering out all the good stuff and only sourcing in the negative. You can't see, what you don't believe, or even experience what you don't believe. And so that's why a lot of people, what I observe is, and people are always sharing their beliefs. You can hear it coming out of their mouths all the time when they say the words I am, whatever follows that. That's what they believe about self or about the world. They're always declaring out and saying that, which is why then you can just observe them and go, I could probably tell what you're going to keep attracting into your life based off of what your belief systems are. So I really believe, and what's beautiful, I'm sure you talk about this on your show with a lot of your other guests, is like neuroplasticity, right? You can rewire your brain and actually embed in new beliefs that align with what it is that you want, so that you can actually manifest it with greater ease instead of working against the grain. Because even if you have all the strategy, all the willpower in the world to try to achieve what you want, you will only play and attract to the level of what you believe. Right? That is literally, or to your identity, which is also the beliefs about self. So that's why when people want to reach greater heights, or to achieve or attract the things that they want, they have to do the inner work to align their beliefs with what they actually want.
Yeah, it's so important. Oh my gosh. And I know this is one of the biggest things, obviously, that Tony Robbins teaches. Like, first you start with like, what's your beliefs? What is the limitations you're putting on yourself? Because it truly is the limitations we are, embodying and believing. It's not the truth, generally speaking. Like 95% of the time, it's not really the reality or the truth. And so how do you guide people to start uncovering these subconscious beliefs, and how do you get them to merge the conscious mind and subconscious mind together to then work for you?
Yeah. So one of the biggest tools I use, of course, was hypnosis. Now, a lot of times, like I mentioned, it's very easy to identify what people's beliefs are. If you want to know what you subconsciously believe, just look at your life. How much money do you have in your bank account, right? That'll tell you if you have an abundant mindset or not, if you don't. Look at your physical body. That'll tell you what your beliefs are about self and how you feel about yourself. Or even look at the people that you keep surrounding you. That'll give you insight into that. So a lot of times, if you just observe what's happening around you, it'll give you a window into what it is that you actually believe. But what I really do is I listen to the words that come out of people's mouths, because as I said before, we're constantly speaking our beliefs out into the world. And so many times I can help people identify by first becoming more self-aware. Listen to yourself. What are you saying? Observe yourself. Observe your environment. What have you created in your reality? And that will clue you into what you actually believe. And through coaching conversations too, I can help them refine it, or to actually excavate what's there. And then once we actually identify what the negative belief is, I love to actually do the age regression, bringing people back into the moments in time to see where that belief was actually formed. And then to clean up those moments where whatever they experienced at that time in their past and made up that limiting belief, we actually rewrite it then. And we can see that it's coming through a child's eyes. But now, as your adult self, what is it? How are you actually viewing that experience? That's the truth, not what the 5-year-old or the 7-year-old or the 10-year-old interpreted that moment as. So you rewrite it while they're in hypnosis, essentially, or that's what I do. And then I actually create scripts for my clients as well for what they want to believe. And while I close it out and they're in a trance state, I'll read the script to them to embed into their subconscious these suggestions. And then I'll usually have my clients listen to the recording for 21 days to keep reinforcing it into their subconscious. But that's...
And is it like new mantras or new I am statements to, switch it into a new belief? Is that what you're doing, is just rewriting a new belief to...
Yeah, so I'll usually write out the scripts as in there. A lot of times so we are most suggestible to ourselves. And so many times I will use the language of my clients in order to put that into their scripts, because what they say and how they say it, they're more willing to receive it than if I were to make stuff up. That's why sometimes when you listen to meditations or affirmation tracks on YouTube, they don't always stick, because they might say something in a way you're like, I would never say it like that, or that feels really weird. And then it kind of pulls you out of that trance state, or at least it does for me. So I really like when I do an intake, I ask a lot of questions and I ask my clients, what do you want? like not the what you don't want, right? Because that's usually where people are always at. It's like what I don't want. So I'll take that, I'll write it in a script as if it's already done. Sometimes I will have them write out specific affirmations and put that in there. But usually one of the key things I do is I have them during that, during the process of the suggestion, I'll have them sitting in a room where they're looking at a screen. This is like an NLP technique. They're watching a screen of what they actually want and seeing it and really being affected by what they're watching. And then I'll have them step into the screen and become like they're literally experiencing what it is that they want and feeling the emotions, seeing what they see, hearing what they hear, smelling what they smell, and ultimately feeling how they feel when it's complete. And then I will do some future pacing and seeing, okay, if it's, 3 years down the road and it's done, how are you feeling now? And then I'll then embed more of the suggestions that they want and creating the scenarios in their mind of what they want to achieve. So that's usually kind of the elements that I'll put inside of their scripts that I'm embedding into them while they're in trance.
That's remarkable. I could see, I know very much about, it's all about the emotions you feel and embodying it in that emotion. So if you don't, because very often when somebody's in a limiting belief, they can't even, like, for example, my limitation for the longest time was I'm stupid. I'm not smart enough. Like, I don't know enough to do this or whatever it may be. I can't speak well. And the only way you could switch that belief is, I believe the best way is doing little steps that could prove that to be false. For example, some of the things I would do personally for I can't speak well. That's why one of the reasons I started a podcast, to be honest, because I'm like, I'm going to jump in the deep end and I'm going to keep doing it over and over. And I'm going to create these little wins for me so I could prove myself that I can. And so that's something I personally do. But I think also it's like we need to be able to feel it and feel it within our emotions that we can step into this new belief, because we could say like these affirmations over and over again, but if we don't really believe it, it's never going to stick.
Yeah.
So I think it's very much the visualization, stepping into it, feeling that emotion, and being able to see yourself in that transformation is almost like you're bringing that emotion into your body.
Oh yeah. Well, and look, the mind and body are tethered together. You can't have a thought without a feeling attached to it. And so even though you have a conscious thought, if the feeling isn't aligned, it has no stickiness and it hasn't fully formed as a belief for you. So it's really about aligning mind and heart together in order for it to really become who you are in sense of like your new beliefs or your new operating system. And I love, Erica, that you're like, I'm just going to do little wins to prove that I am this other version of self, right? You're actually doing something, I forget the exact name of it, but when you're actually stepping into the beingness of who you already want to be, right? You're acting as if you're already like, look, I am a speaker. I have a podcast and I can speak really well. And I'm able to interview people and people are listening to the episodes. So you're creating all these micro wins. So your brain is going, oh, look. And the more pleasure you attach to it too, the more it starts to become your belief.
The celebration,
totally.
Like the celebration part, this celebrating the small wins. I learned that from actually, or I remember Nick Santostasio during UPW, he mentions a lot when I interviewed him, he mentioned like celebrating those small little wins. And I honestly think that is huge because, and I do this all the time, the littlest things. I create something on Canva and it looks amazing. I'm like, yes, I rock.
Same.
I'm not kidding. I'm like a little cheerleader to myself, but I think it's important because we so very often slip by not even noticing the little things we do that is a little win. And I think that is just going to, again, reinforce a new belief.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, look, we move towards pleasure and we avoid pain. So the celebration to me is the pleasure, right? We're literally setting off these pleasure signals. So we're going to do more of that. And that's what we want to keep doing as we grow and evolve, is keep stepping into these bigger versions. Is as we take these new risks, as we take these new actions and we celebrate them along the way, it's encouraging the brain to keep going in that direction. And it's going to keep wanting to latch on to more of those pleasure moments. And so as we continue to celebrate, that's what we're creating as a habit for ourselves, is a constant movement forward. So I love that you do that. I'm the same. I happy dance a lot all the time.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, why not? More celebration. Actually, so you talked about merging, or, the synergy between our heart and our heart and our mind. And I'm curious, what do you do personally to encourage your clients to get into that alignment?
Yeah.
Because I think some people feel very much unaligned in that manner.
So I take a lot of quiet time. I think a lot of times people, when we're actually doing this inner work, we actually need to create the space and solitude and quiet time to listen to ourselves and to connect with ourselves. And so what I'll do many times, especially if I'm trying to embed in a new belief, right, or to connect the two together, is I'll sit with myself. And if there is something new that I want to create in my mind, or a new belief or identity of self that I want to adopt, I will drop into visualizations of it. So we have 4 levels of awareness, and that's how a lot of our beliefs are formed. And through like our rapid rewire processes, we hit all 4 levels of awareness to clean up or embed in what we want. So it's images, thoughts, emotions, and body sensations. So when I talk about heart-mind connection, the mind part is images and thoughts. And for the emotion piece, it's emotions and body sensations, the somatic based. And so when I am starting to create pictures in my mind, images, I'll have the thoughts that run through my mind when the images are occurring. And then I'll actually feel into, what does this feel like? Not only emotionally, but where are the sensations in my body that I'm experiencing? So I come from all 4 ways and really start to tune up the 2 together. Sometimes if I think something and I'm like, ooh, I notice a misalignment internally in my body, I'm like, okay, that's where we need to do a little tuning up to connect the 2 together. Because when I'm thinking about love, but then I'm scared in my heart, I have a contraction because I don't want to get hurt. Well, how can I call in love? There's a misalignment there. So I'll then start to use my thoughts to create the feeling that aligns with what I want to see in the pictures too. So that starts to create more of the mental, emotional syncing, the mind heart sync together for me. And that also is a powerful way that I'll rewire things to make sure that what I see feels safe for me in my mind, right? That's why we don't achieve certain things, is it just doesn't feel safe for us. Or it's not aligned in our beliefs. And whatever we believe, again, we keep acting or attracting in accordance with what we believe. And whatever isn't in alignment with what we believe is actually perceived as a threat by the mind. And so we will reject that thing, right? And so that's why a lot of times if we don't get our beliefs aligned, even though we say we want something, it ain't going to come in because it's going to feel unfamiliar and unsafe. And I notice that when I go into these quiet spaces where I start to visualize next level things. There's some really huge things I want to create right now. And I notice when there's contractions, the doubt comes in. Can I actually have this? Is it possible? And am I capable of doing this? Who am I to think that I can actually build something like this? And so then when I'm like, ooh, there's a misalignment there, I'm not going to be able to create what I want to see in my mind if my emotions, we've talked so much about it, aren't aligned fully. So then again, like I said, I'll use my thoughts to start to either soothe myself or affirm myself so that the emotion starts to get aligned with what I see so that it feels safe. And many times it's safe for me too. And then I'll keep saying it until I notice that the contraction starts to ease up and it begins to feel an expansion. And I notice where I feel it in my body. And then I can feel that the energy and the emotion is actually aligned with what I'm thinking and seeing in my mind. So that's another technique though.
How remarkable. I think everybody should give that a try. I think what you're explaining really takes a repetitive commitment to notice the connection. Because I think as it goes with meditation, it's everybody thinks immediately that meditation is going to do all these things, but it's really, that's why they call it a practice, is it's something you have to always return to, and then you'll reap the benefits, but you just have to give it time. So kind of the practice you're sharing, I think that, commit to it for, hey, I don't know, 30 days or something. And I think that's when you could really start to notice exactly what you're explaining, which is beautiful.
Yeah.
And I think that it's all about creating that space to go really within, most importantly.
Yeah. And the thing too is the more you practice it, the faster it can go. Right? We're actually training the brain to go, hey, this is where I want to go, and this is how I want to feel each time. And I notice that alignment happens pretty quickly for me now. There isn't that much resistance because it's like I've trained my mind and my heart enough to know, oh, we're syncing now. This is what we're doing. When I sit down and go into silence, amazing. It's like, okay, here we go. This is what this chick wants us to do. So let's get on board so we don't stay here forever.
Yeah, let's make this quicker.
Yeah. So it can speed up the more that you practice it.
And so I know part of your story since I'm following you and everything. And I know you're in a great loving relationship now. I love seeing everything you share because it's just, you could see the glow, you could see the love and the complete happiness in the relationship you're in. But I know you also shared, it wasn't like that a couple years ago, or I don't know how long it's been, like 2.5 years. I know it was the beginning of COVID, since I know your story. So can you share kind of, I don't know if you had like a breaking moment realizing, because I know for myself, one of my biggest struggles was relationships. And finally there was, I had many, if you want to say, aha moments, like where I'm like, okay, I learned this lesson. Okay, I learned this lesson on a 201 level. Oh, okay, 301. And then finally you get knocked down. You're like, okay, I finally I'm here to learn my lesson and put it into play and actually, be very intentional in creating change in these patterns. So I'm curious for you, was there something of that? And then what was the pattern you saw happening in your relationships and how that transformed? Yeah. Loaded question.
So I had and witnessed some traumatic things around with men and the ways that they were with women when I was younger, and also experienced a lack of safety with some important men in my life because of things that occurred. And so I adopted the men aren't to be trusted. And it, as I shared earlier, it really played out in negative ways in my life. And because I didn't feel that men weren't to be trusted, I actually in the beginning got into relationships with, for lack of a better word, like kind of beta men that I could emasculate and dominate. Because for me, I'm like, oh, that's how I can control the situation. I'm going to be in charge and I'm going to be in control. However, it's not a loving relationship, right? It wasn't fulfilling for me, and I'm sure it wasn't for them. But I was also quite young when I was first in these types of relationships of not being my best self, I guess, because I was running with coping mechanisms to keep myself safe inside of relationships. And yet, even though I thought I was in control, I kept getting cheated on. Even when I thought that I was in charge and I could spot the patterns. And I've been with Matt, my current partner, for 2.5 years, but 5 years before that, I was in a relationship where I let go of some of my non-negotiables to be with a man because I thought he was safe and he would never cheat on me. Things that were really important, like he valued growth or family, and also loved adventure and was very personable, and he just wasn't that, but I was willing to sacrifice that so that I could feel safe in a relationship. And then when I was meditating one morning and I literally heard checkmatch.com. That's how he and I met. And so I logged in with my old passcodes. I actually went to my Gmail, found like when they alert you when someone messages you, found the message from him, logged into the old passcodes, and it took me to a new profile name of his that was active. And he had taken photos from my Facebook and put it onto his account. We were living together and talking about having kids. And on his profile, active profile, it said, I just broke up with my girlfriend. She was amazing, but not the one. I'm looking for my little spoon to my big spoon, something like that. And I would literally felt like the final brick that had my heart a little bit open, like that last brick was placed to fully shut it. And when I talked to one of my mentors, She goes, did you see what did the picking? And I was like, what? She goes, don't cheat. Now the subconscious doesn't pick up negatives, right? Or the knots. It just hears cheat, cheat, cheat. So you're still now trying to choose from a fear, which ultimately you choose the fear, right? And so I that's why a lot of times I say, when you affirm, don't say I don't want this. It's more of what you do want. And that was a huge lesson for me to see that I was letting my fears and these limiting beliefs still run me. And I actually just closed my heart for a couple years. I was like, screw this. I'm not going to allow myself to be hurt anymore. This isn't even worth it. And then after 2 years, I was like, okay, I actually want love. And what do I need to do to get there? And that's when I realized that I didn't trust men, because I started really looking back and reflecting. As I mentioned, look at what's happening in your outside world to give you insight into what your internal beliefs are. And I was seeing my patterns with men that ultimately I didn't trust them, and they're not safe. And so that's where I started doing the rewiring. And I mentioned before, the first belief that I embedded was, everywhere I go, all I see is good men. And then I started embedding in more of like, it's safe for me to open my heart to a man. It's safe for me to, and then I really rewired in more and more and more. And ultimately that's what called in Matt. Actually, take that back. I was starting to rewire all those. And then this was the wild thing. July 7th, 2019, it was day 1 of Mercury retrograde. That episode of Mercury retrograde. And I was at the beach in Marina Del Rey. I lived there, and I would always go out to the beach and just do my morning walks and just like connect with source and my angels. And I heard in my mind the question of, what if I'm actually not meant to be in partnership in this lifetime? Because I had worked with a Vedic.
That's heavy.
What's that?
That's heavy. That can be really heavy to hear that, you know?
Yeah. And I had worked with a Vedic astrologer, and I remember her saying to me, because I said, do you sometimes look at people's charts and there's no love? She goes, oh yeah. And I have to tell them, at least you have your health. And so I know you're shaking your head. I'm like, oh, I know. And I don't know why that thought popped in my mind. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, why did I hear that? Is that because that's the message that I'm supposed to hear, that I'm not supposed to? And so I actually dove into that, and I got pissed. Like, I grieved it, and I moved fully through that possibility. And on the other side, I came out with, you know what though? I have an extraordinary life. And I love everything I've created. I have an epic community. I'm doing work that I'm inspired by and I'm passionate about. And let me just go live my best life. And I was in my joy. And I really believe that healing my relationship with the masculine, but ultimately healing my relationship with this need to have something, to grasp it, to want it, it was like, let go, is what called Matt in, because I was living my best life and he witnessed that. And that's what he said. That's what drew him to me. He was like, you were so playful and so happy and in your joy. And that was what he saw was like the most attractive quality that I was possessing at the time that had him drawn towards me.
So beautiful. And I think that goes for everyone. I think, man or woman, like when you see somebody just, living their life in pure joy, it's attractive. Mm-hmm. It's like, you're curious, like what's going on with them? Like, I want some of that, it's just natural to be attracted to that. And that goes even to a female. Like if I were to looking at you and I see you just radiating joy, I want to know what's going on. I want to, I think it's just human to recognize that in somebody and feel the same emotion, like curious and intrigued by it. But one thing I know you speak heavily on, which I love talking about, is self-love. And I truly believe, as you mentioned, since that was one of my big struggles when I finally okay, I got to take full ownership of what's going on in my life and my reality, the same patterns happening over. I'm choosing this basically. So now I need to choose a different story. Who do I need to become? Not because for so long I felt like I needed to be somebody to be attracted or loved, just not truly, when I look back, sometimes I feel like I wasn't showing up truly as my authentic self, like really embodying who I truly am, possibly because I didn't really know who I was. And so when I started doing that work and really uncovering, like, what do I value? Who am I as a woman? Like, what do I stand for? And what is my truth? And when I started really unraveling that and really becoming the woman that I saw for myself, like, who do I want to become as a woman, and really embodying that self-love and self-worth, not just saying I love myself, but really embodying it, that's when things shifted. And I think that, as you were talking about, when you were starting to really love your life and just being in joy in your own existence, not needing anything or needing to control anything. And by the way, it reminds me, and I remember you saying this to me after MITT, you said you're the white, what is it called? White woman, or what is it?
Or the lady in white.
What
lady
is it?
In white.
Yeah. Yeah, we were both lady in white. And when you were telling me about the control thing, that was one of my things too. I like to control. And I think that was one of the attributes of the lady in white.
Yes, I know.
So I see me and you, but it's funny because I feel like that's the old Bean that I used to partly, embody. And so I had to release attachment to wanting this love and instead become that person that is lovable. And there's a huge difference in that, So I would love if you could talk about, because I love that you share this. There's 8 pillars of self-love. And the reason why I want you to unravel this, because I think self-love is a very, it's a powerful word and it means a lot. But when you really take it apart, there's a lot of layers to it that get you to this radical self-love. And so I would love to hear your pillars, because I think that kind of will lead us into, what you have today.
Yeah. Happy to share that. And I want to say something really quick too, before I dive into that.
Yeah.
Self-love was something huge I needed to shift into. I feel like it's just a never ending game, or like a continuation of self-love. Cause I keep noticing little nuanced things that I'm like, oof, that is where I need to bring more of it in. And where the work I did attracted Matt in, but it didn't end there. Like, through the course of our relationship, a lot of people don't know this, he's 10 years younger than me. And he also, to me is very attractive. And there's been women who haven't been as respectful of our relationship in front of me. And so it actually activated my own insecurities, and seeing that I still had anxious attachment. And I noticed some of my old anxious energies that I did with men who cheated were starting to arise with him. And I'm like, whoo, I got to clear this. So the work continued, right? And so I just wanted to share that with people. It's like, yeah, I attracted him in. And once I got into partnership, it continued to reveal certain misalignments internally that if I really wanted to have a healthy relationship, I had to continue to do deeper work to heal, and also to love myself more through it, because my insecurities was a lack of self-love, right? So then diving into the self-love piece now, I had a deep self-love journey. It's still in progress. And a lot of times when I see people talking about self-love, it's a lot about the doing, right? Like it's so much self-care. It's like take a bath, buy yourself some flowers, set a boundary, which is also a good thing. It's not so much a doing, but that's an act of self-respect in my eyes. But it's a lot about the doing and the self-care and the flowers and this and that. And for me, self-love is more of a way of being with yourself. And so through my journey, I discovered 8 different pillars, as I like to call them, of self-love. And they are self-acceptance, self-forgiveness, self-compassion, self-appreciation or self-celebration, self-respect, self-trust, self-permission, and receiving.
Oh,
and
yes.
I'm like, if you can master one, obviously try to embody all, but your life will radically change when you start to relate to yourself differently. So with like self-acceptance, in what ways are you judging yourself, shaming yourself, setting high standards that then of course you can beat yourself up if you don't meet them, but really accepting and loving all parts of who you are. because a lot of our issues are we've had these fractured pieces of ourselves. Some we'll keep, some we judge and stuff away or push away or shame away. And that's what creates this dissonance internally with us, because we haven't loved all parts and accepted all parts. Self-forgiveness. So often we can beat ourselves up for things, or continue to guilt ourselves or make ourselves feel bad for mistakes that we've made. And it's like, can you forgive yourself? We're human, and relate to yourself the way that you would want to another. Like, set yourself free from this weight that you put on yourself. And you can do that through forgiveness. And then, the self-compassion piece, that's self-explanatory. Self-appreciation, similar. A lot of times when I ask people, what do you love about yourself? They're like, ugh, they get so stumped, or it's really hard, or I see them start to sweat, or they try to deflect. And I was like, wow, if we don't actually appreciate who we are, celebrate who we are, again, that can create disruptions in our life. Self-respect, huge. So many times we dishonor ourselves. We say yes when we mean no, or we allow people to treat us in a certain way. So it's like bringing in that self-respect, and then self-trust, self-permission, giving yourself the permission to do, be, or have whatever you want. And then receiving is a big one that I observe is really difficult for a lot of people, especially women.
I was going to go ahead.
No, I was saying, and men, I just realized because Matt, my partner, just worked through a big receiving thing recently.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I think it's one of the things that a lot of people struggle in. And one of the things that I learned is receiving compliments. I think, as you kind of touched on, when somebody compliments you, let's say oh, you look so beautiful today. Very often somebody would be like, oh my gosh, I just walked out of the house. My hair's a mess. I haven't washed in a few days. Instead, say, thank you, I received that. Or thank you, that's so kind, I appreciate it. Stop yourself and not put it you're almost insulting the person and yourself, to be honest, because they're complimenting you. They're stopping and using their time to compliment you. So I think that's a big thing to notice yourself when you go into this trying to deflect and push away their compliment.
And that's just a microcosm of the bigger things, right? When we want to receive in a beautiful relationship that's actually giving versus taking, well, you have to be able to receive. Also, if you want to create abundance in your life, are you stopping the flow of abundance and of love or of money or all the different ways that abundance can show up, or are you open to receiving it? And I love what you said about the compliment piece. That already is just a little piece, if you just tune in with that, to see what your relationship with is, or your relationship to receiving is. When I was teaching, I was coaching inside of a treatment center with women who had borderline personality disorder and bipolar and other mood disorders. And one of the workshops I would do was around self-love and receiving. And I would tell them, if anybody ever acknowledges you, I was like, you can say 2 or 3 words. The 2 words are thank you, or thank you in their name. And then I said, and then step 2 is think quietly in your mind, yes, I am. Beautiful. To affirm that, because then that starts to embed in and wire in those things. And it's funny because next level receiving is thank you for noticing. Not just thank you, but when people are oh, you look really beautiful today, you're thanks for noticing. To me, that's
great.
Next level receiving, when you can actually acknowledge it in that way, is because you see it for yourself.
Oh, I love that. That's beautiful. I didn't think about that. The one thing I start to talk about now about self-love is that self-acceptance piece, because I believe that is really the foundation of self-love. Because when you fully accept the totality of who you are and your experience and where you are today, you no longer are held down by these negative beliefs and the stories you put on yourself that are literally blocking you to go to the next level. So I like to think of self-acceptance as the foundation, the pathway to the next steps, to the forgiveness, to the trust, to the, all these things. So I think that's the one thing that we all know, as I love that you express, you're still on this journey. We are all still in, I love this saying, we're all still in the same, we're in the classroom together.
We are.
We're still learning our lessons. Nobody is exempt of this. This is life. This is a school, and we're just learning along the way. And it's a continuous journey. I like to call it a pursuit through life, is just learning lessons and becoming our best self and being as purposeful and intentional in the way we go through life and being available to learn those lessons. So I love that you say that you're still on that journey, because it truly is, like, I think relationships teach us the most. So it makes sense that you're noticing these little things come up, if you want to say triggers, however you like to word it, come up to show you what you still need to learn. And we need to be available to learn those lessons. So talking about your relationship now, how has this relationship been different than your past relationships that you feel stands out the most, that really has, become this healthy relationship you have now?
I think inside of this relationship, what's made it super healthy is I don't need Matt. I don't need him. Do I desire him? Do I appreciate him? Do I enjoy him? Yeah, but I don't need him. I think that's a huge piece, is especially in life, when we need something, when we become attached to it, that's when we can create suffering for ourselves, because when it's no longer there, or when it's not behaving or being in the ways that we want, we can become disappointed. And so for me, it's like, I don't need him, but I desire him. And we share a lot of the same values. We practice radical honesty with each other, even when it's like, I don't think you're going to want to hear this, but because we both don't want to harbor or hold anything inside. But when we communicate, we always tune into our hearts first before we communicate with the other person our truth. And we set ourselves up to, in the conversations, I'll say, hey, I need to share something with you. Do you have space for me to do that right now? Instead of just dropping bombs on him, and same thing for him. We also take the time to appreciate the other person. So we have a practice that we do that, where we're literally expressing what it is that we appreciate and love about the other person. And we also allow the other person to be themselves. We're going on this trip to Italy. A friend of ours is doing this beautiful retreat, and I'm facilitating there. And so I get to be there. But then our friends who are going are like, is Matt coming? And I'm like, maybe. And they're like, well, get him to come. And I was like, no, he gets to decide for himself if he wants to be there. And I'm not going to force his decision, but I'll encourage his decision, or support whatever he wants. And so my friend's like, but you can get him to go. I'm like, but that's not my work. And so we really practice this, allowing each other to be our own sovereign beings and making choices, and not trying to manipulate or control the other person either. So there's many more things I could share with you, but those are some of the foundational pieces that really work for us in ways that feel healthy. And we also do check-ins quarterly. And we design out our relationship. We'll say, hey, how are you? How am I? How's our relationship? Where do we want to go? What's working? What's not working? And we literally create it intentionally together. So that's also what really, really works, because we're always on top of what's occurring in our lives and what really will continue to support this entity that is our relationship. Yeah.
I love that. And actually, a mutual friend of ours, I won't say her name on here to keep it private, but she actually is the one that taught me to do, I forgot what she calls them, but they're quarterly. Is it quarterly? I forgot how often she does it. I think it is quarterly, these check-ins with her marriage, and to ensure all these things that they're on, that they're checking in with their relationship and how they feel. My significant other and I do something we call summit. We summit and we do it. We were supposed to do it every week. It doesn't end. That's quite often. So we don't do it that much anymore, but it is one of those things, checking in on the relationship. How are you feeling? What do you feel today in this present moment? And also financial stuff and our future goals together and separately. So I think it's a beautiful practice, because it's a very intentional space you create for each other to have these conversations that might be more difficult in the everyday life. So I think that's beautiful. And it sounds like you really have a beautiful relationship that is, it's consciously choosing each other every day to love one another and accept each other individually as well as the growth of your relationship. So it's beautiful. I love it. So talking about, just to close off, I want people to know, so the rapid rewire method, which you're offering right now, this is what you're putting your soul into, which is amazing. I was looking at your website. It looks remarkable. I want to personally jump in it. So if you could share with people, you kind of already touched on a few of the practices, but what's the offer? I will definitely include it into the show notes for people to look deeper into it if they want to jump on board. But is it an online course? Is it working one-on-one with you? What does it look like?
The techniques that I shared are actually not rapid rewire. Those are more the hypnotic stuff. And then some of my private practices that I'll do or practices that I share with clients. But quick history, do we have just a moment to share about rapid rewire?
Yeah.
So I actually had a miscarriage last year in February, and it was the hardest, probably the biggest adult trauma I've experienced, because I desire to be a mom. We weren't trying, and I got the gift of it. So we're like, this is a miracle. And then when the miscarriage happened, I went dark, because I was like, this is not a benevolent universe. Screw whoever's in charge. And why would you, like, it was so cool. I got really angry and sad, because it was like, I feel like it's part of my dharma is to be a mom. And so when that like tease happened, and yet there was a bigger plan in play, because my partner actually didn't want more kids, and it opened up his heart to want more kids. And then it also had,
beautiful.
What's that?
No, that's beautiful.
And so now it's nice, because he gets to choose it versus it being something he just had to accept because it was what was happening. But it also connected me to these protocols that are the rapid rewire method, because literally in one session, so I, have amazing tools that I work with, because I have a lot of high profile clients I was working with who wanted fast results. And I know there's no timeline for grieving, but after 5 months, I was still struggling pretty bad and having days where I couldn't get out of bed. So I was like, okay, I need help. And then I got introduced to these tools, and literally in one session, the trauma was processed. And then the emotional charge of sadness and grief was drained, that I could not even connect to that feeling after 60 minutes. It was gone out of my system. And I was like, holy crap, that's true integration of a trauma. Most people don't actually know how to do that. The tools that we have can do it, because once the trauma is clear, the emotional charge can disappear, and we're literally free. It's true liberation, right? And so I was blown away. I was like, what the heck is this? I thought I had the fastest tools, and then these literally floored me. And so I kept getting processed with these protocols. And then after 7 weeks, I was just clearing things at rapid speed, that I heard the divine command, you're meant to bring these tools into the world. And so that's how the rapid rewire method was birthed, is we're empowering people with these tools that you can create, immediate mental and emotional relief that provoke like stress or doubt or stuckness. We can break through any sort of inner barriers, problems, or challenges. We can heal and release trauma. We call it intense experience release instead of using the T word, because I feel like sometimes people use that a little too. So intense experience release, and then full-blown spiritual awakening. And they're through a set of guided protocols that are literally in a script. So if you can read a script, you can catalyze change for another person in sometimes 30 minutes or less. And what's neat about these tools is once the shift happens, it happens in real time and it's done. So you don't need to keep going back to meditate about it, breathe about it, journal about it. It's like when it's done, it's done. Like for me, the miscarriage, it was like, once that was processed, I haven't felt sad or grieved around it. One of my key team members, she's written about it, so I'm not exposing anything, but she had an eating disorder and was in therapy for 10 years, and literally with the same intense experience release protocol, got rid of her eating disorder, and she's never had a problem with food since. And so we're getting such insane results with the tools. I really feel like the world needs these, because we need transformation and fast. We don't have time to spend, years on a couch talking about it, or sometimes like in the repetition constantly of trying to rewire. We need things that can work and work quickly. So that's what our protocols do. And it's exciting just to bring them out into the masses. That's my mission now. And I feel like that's going to be my legacy, is contributing these tools to humanity. for deep healing and transformation.
Remarkable. I mean, it does sound absolutely remarkable. So this was introduced to you through your own experience, and then you learned these tools and you're able.
And we're training people in them now. Yeah.
I know, I saw that. That's what I was intrigued by. So I will include all in the show notes. Where could people best find you other than that?
So you can find me. I'm pretty active on Instagram. So I am Stephanie Kwong. If you slide in my DMs, I will message you back. And if people actually want a taste of one of our protocols of Rapid Rewire, you can go to rapidrewiremethod.com/alternator. And you can download one of our tools. Will guide you through it, and you can actually experience the quick relief of any sort of problem or issue or challenge or stuckness that you're experiencing, just to get a taste. Yeah.
Remarkable. Amazing. Okay, I'll include that all in the show notes. So just to close off with one of my questions I ask everybody, if you were to leave a piece of wisdom, which would be a life lesson you've learned along your journey that you just feel anybody needs to hear right now, what would that piece of wisdom be?
I'm just going to trust what comes up. It's just like, you're enough. Literally, there's nothing you need to do or to prove or to have in order to show that, like, you're enough, and just love yourself for all that you are. Yeah.
Beautiful. Absolutely. I think that's where we all struggle is thinking we're not enough or we're not loved. And we are, each and every one of us, we deserve any opportunity that is available to us. So I love that message. So amazing. Thank you so much, Stephanie. I so appreciate you. It's so nice to connect again and witness all the things you're doing and, your impact in the world. And it's, I know there's greatness, beyond greatness ahead of you, and all your desires are right in front of you. So such an honor. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. And Erica, the work that you do is so inspiring. And I just want to thank you for having me on the show. Thank you for your commitment to your own growth by starting this podcast. But because of that, the impact that you've had through sharing your wisdom and the wisdom of others through this show. So I just want to acknowledge you for that. Yeah.
Thank you. I received that.